The Engero Tales, Tales of the Soul. Years passed since Nyana's final walk through the village. The lake had grown still, not in peace, but in pause. The women of Nyanjara kept their vow. Each year before the rains, they gathered at the lake's edge. They cast their salt. They whispered her name. But something was changing. The salt no longer dissolved in the water. It sank, clumping, hardening. Rejected. Children began to say the lake no longer echoed. Fishermen said their nets returned empty. And one night, a boy named Obi disappeared while chasing fireflies by the reeds. His footprints ended at the water's edge. Just like Luanda. But there was no pile of salt. Only silence. And a stone with a fresh crack in it, shaped like a weaver's spindle. 3 girls began to dream the same dream. Eo, the weaver's daughter, with fingers like dancing reeds. Komira, the chief's niece, always questioning, always watching. And little Sephiu, who hadn't spoken since the day her mother vanished into the lake fog 5 years ago. In their dreams, they saw a loom made of bone. Not bone from people, but something older, something from beneath. Threads of light and salt twisted through the loom, pulled by ghostly hands. And a voice, deep and echoing, said, "The balance was never yours to keep." Each girl awoke with salt in her hair. At the next ceremony, the women cast their salt into the lake, but it floated. The village elders were shaken. Some said they had forgotten a part of the ritual. Others said Nyana's silence had birthed something else. But Komira noticed something strange. The pattern of the floating salt formed a spiral, like a spinning wheel. Eo touched the water and whispered, "This is not rejection. It's a message." Only Sephiu stepped directly into the lake. She didn't sink. The water lifted her. And then it parted. The 3 girls descended into the lake, not drowning, but dreaming while awake. Below, the world was not dark but lit with threads of glowing salt. They walked along a path woven through water, into a cavern where a figure sat at a great loom. It was not Nyana. It was the weaver beneath, the spirit who wove the balance between sacrifice and blessing. Nyana had once been one of her threads. The spirit spoke not in words, but in feeling, a deep sorrow. Nyana kept the balance through remembrance. But remembrance became ritual. Ritual became habit. And habit forgets. The girls understood. The salt could not be cast without understanding. It had to be earned again. Woven back into the fabric of living. The girls returned with no water on their skin, only salt in their palms. They began to teach. Not just how to remember, but how to live in balance. Eo wove cloth that shimmered with salt thread, gifted to mothers and widows. Komira led salt-gathering walks, telling the true tale of Nyana, the full one, not the softened. And Sephiu finally spoke. Her voice was soft, but her words carried far. The lake no longer wants salt. It wants story. It wants care. It wants us to walk with it, not just offer to it. These were the words that echoed not from the mouth of an elder or oracle, but from the lips of a once silent girl, whose voice now carried the weight of a truth long forgotten. For generations, the people had stood beside the lake with open hands, but closed hearts. Casting salt like payment. Like penance. Like a duty passed down without memory. But the lake was never a ledger. It was a listener. A keeper of balance. A weaver of what was, what is, and what could still be. It had grown quiet not out of vengeance, but out of sorrow. Because it had been turned into a place of transaction, when it had always been a place of connection. And so the people began to return. Not just with offerings, but with presence. They sat at its banks and told stories, not only of Nyana, but of mothers and midwives, of harvests and heartbreaks. They sang lullabies to the water. They mended nets and braided hair beside it. Children traced its edge with muddy toes and unfiltered laughter. They stopped asking the lake for blessings and started thanking it for its patience. And in time, the lake began to echo again. Not with the eerie cries of the lost, but with the sounds of life. Fishermen found their nets full once more. The reeds grew thick and sweet. The water shimmered like memory itself. The salt, once rejected, dissolved with grace. But the ritual did not end. It evolved. Once a year, the women still gather at dawn. Their hands no longer heavy with grief, but full of gifts. Threads from cloths woven in memory. Stories written by young and old. Names whispered of those who should never be forgotten. They cast not salt but meaning. And in the gentle ripple of the water, they hear a song. Not Nyana's voice. Not a curse. Not a reckoning. But a weaving. A living rhythm. A harmony between lake and land. Between giving and gratitude. Between the people and the spirit that once whispered. The balance was never yours to keep. Now they do not try to keep it. They tend it. Thread by thread. Step by step. Story by story. And the lake that last is at peace. Subscribe to Engero Tales today.